Let's begin with a breath. In and out. Because what we're about to dive into won't be easy. But it may be one of the most important lessons you'll ever carry with you. Emotional detachment rarely begins at the final goodbye. Sometimes it starts long before, while you're still standing beside someone. You're there in body, but your heart feels invisible. You wait for a word, a touch, a flicker of care, but it never comes. And yet you stay. Not because you're weak, not because you're blind, but because you loved, you believed, you gave sincerely from your heart. But then something shifts. The bond that once held you up begins to weigh you down. The connection starts to strangle instead of support. And here lies the true battle. Not with them, but within yourself. Stoic wisdom never tells you to deny your feelings. It teaches you to face them, to understand them, and to direct them. To separate what lies within your control from what never will. To recognize the difference between what you can shape and what you must release. And perhaps the hardest truth, attachment is not love. And love should never come at the cost of your own destruction. In this episode, I will not ask you to erase someone you once cherished. Instead, I invite you to release the chains of pain still tied to them. I will share with you 10 Stoic principles, drawn from the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, to help you reclaim your heart, your clarity, and your strength. The goal is not to become cold, nor to shut yourself away. The goal is to return to yourself, to quiet that lingering voice that whispers, maybe they'll come back, maybe they'll change. Because today, you are the one who will change. So, are you ready to begin this journey? 1. Accept what's out of your hands. Have you ever found yourself replaying the same moments over and over in your head, wondering what you could have said differently, or done better, or held on just a little tighter so they wouldn't walk away? It's almost like our mind becomes a theater of regrets, showing the same painful scenes on repeat. But what if I told you that the first step to emotional freedom isn't found in rethinking the past, but in accepting the present? This is where Stoicism speaks loudest. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That one idea alone can change the way we relate to heartbreak. Because the truth is, you can't control how someone feels about you. You can't force them to stay. You can't rewrite their choices. The moment you accept this, not intellectually but emotionally, you begin to release the weight you've been dragging around for too long. We often confuse letting go with giving up, but they're not the same. Giving up is what happens when we lose hope in life. Letting go is what happens when we choose to stop fighting battles we were never meant to win. You see, clinging to someone who's already chosen to step away is like grabbing a rope that's burning your hand. The tighter you hold, the deeper the wound. So ask yourself, why am I still trying to control what's not mine to control? Is it fear of being alone? Is it the belief that you're not enough without them? Is it the illusion that closure will finally bring peace? Whatever it is, the cost is too high because the more you try to hold on to them, the more you lose yourself. Detachment starts with a shift in responsibility. It means saying to yourself, I am only responsible for how I love, not how they receive it. I am responsible for how I show up, not whether they recognize my worth. I am responsible for how I heal, not whether they come back. That shift is power. That shift is peace. Think of a tree shedding its leaves in autumn. It doesn't panic. It doesn't cling. It lets go. Not because it failed, but because the cycle is part of its nature. The same applies to us. People come and go. Feelings change. What was once certain becomes uncertain. It hurts, yes. But resisting this reality won't bring comfort. It only brings suffering. So instead of asking, why did they stop caring? Ask, what part of me is still trying to change what's already done? Instead of hoping they'll wake up and realize what they lost, wake up yourself and realize what you've been losing while waiting. Time, energy, clarity, self-respect. Here's the hard truth. Healing doesn't begin when they come back. It begins the moment you stop needing them to start with this. Sit with it. Accept it. Not because it feels good, but because it sets you free. 2. Stop romanticizing what hurt you. Why is it that when someone walks away, we suddenly start remembering only the good parts? The laughter, the connection, the promises. We replay the highlights like a film reel, as if our mind is desperately trying to convince us that what we lost was perfect, irreplaceable. But memory can be deceiving. Pain has a strange way of rewriting the past, polishing over the red flags, editing out the silence, the distance, the moments that made you feel small. This is one of the greatest emotional traps. Not the person themselves, but the idea of who they were. That's what we cling to. That's what keeps us stuck. You're not in love with them anymore. You're in love with the version of them that exists in your memory, carefully curated by a heart that doesn't want to let go. But Stoicism reminds us, we must see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When we romanticize someone who hurt us, we are reacting from emotion, not from clarity. We are choosing illusion over truth. And every time we revisit that illusion, we pour energy into a ghost. A ghost that cannot love you, cannot show up, cannot heal you. It's time to take the pedestal down, to stop idealizing someone who couldn't give you what you needed. Maybe they weren't bad. Maybe they were just unavailable, or unaware, or not ready for the kind of depth you brought. But either way, they left a scar. And pretending they didn't is not strength, it's denial. Think about this. If someone repeatedly made you feel anxious, unseen, or not enough, is it really love that you're missing? Or is it the comfort of familiarity, the fear of starting over, the longing for who you were when you were with them? You owe it to yourself to be honest here, because clarity isn't cruel, it's compassionate. This isn't about bitterness, it's about protection. When you stop romanticizing the past, you stop inviting it back into your heart. You start to see the full picture. The beauty, yes, but also the pain. And only when you see both can you truly let go. So the next time your mind drifts back to those moments, pause, ask yourself, am I remembering the truth, or am I creating a fantasy that keeps me stuck? Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means facing the past with open eyes and an open heart, and choosing yourself anyway. Let go of the story. Let go of the fantasy, and in that space, begin writing something new, something real, something where you are no longer a second choice in your own life. 3. Create distance to regain clarity. When emotions are raw, proximity becomes poison. Staying too close to someone you're trying to let go of, whether physically, digitally, or emotionally, only deepens the wound. It's like trying to dry your clothes in the rain. You keep hoping for healing, but you're still standing in the very storm that soaked you. That's why the Stoics emphasize separation, not just from people, but from the impulses and illusions that blur our judgment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You must build up your life action by action and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible." But you can't take action. You can't rebuild your strength if your mind is still orbiting around someone else's gravity. Emotional detachment doesn't begin with indifference. It begins with distance. Distance that clears the fog. Distance that allows you to see what was real, what was projection, and what was never truly aligned to begin with. This doesn't always mean blocking or disappearing, though sometimes that's necessary. It means drawing boundaries that protect your mental state. Stop checking their social media. Stop reading old texts like they're sacred scripture. Stop feeding the habit of wondering what they're doing, who they're with, or if they think about you. Because every time you do, you hand over a little more control, not to them, but to the version of them that lives rent-free in your mind. There's a kind of power that only returns when you reclaim your attention. And clarity is born from space. When you step back, you begin to see the dynamics clearly. The things you tolerated, the parts of yourself you lost in the process, and the way you settled just to feel needed. You start to remember who you were before the confusion. And more importantly, you begin to see who you could become after it. Think of your mind as a room. As long as that person is sitting in the center of it, there's no space for you to think, feel, or breathe freely. But when you open the windows, when you let the air of detachment in, the noise settles, the temperature cools, and for the first time, you can hear yourself again. So ask yourself, what am I still holding on to that keeps me close to them? What would happen if I gave myself a week, a month, or even a day without their shadow hanging over me? The answers may scare you, but they will also liberate you. Detach, not because you don't care anymore, but because you finally care enough about yourself to create room for peace. Detach so you can return to yourself. Not the self they liked, not the self they broke, but the self you're meant to be. 4. Master your reactions, not their behavior. We spend so much time trying to decode the actions of others. Why did they pull away? Why did they change? Why are they so cold now when they used to be so warm? It becomes a full-time mental job trying to predict, analyze, and make sense of someone else's emotional weather. But here's the problem. The more you focus on them, the less you understand yourself. And that's the trap. That's where emotional attachment quietly feeds itself through your obsession with things you cannot control. The Stoics taught a radical yet liberating truth. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them. You don't suffer because they moved on. You suffer because of what you tell yourself about their silence.
You don't ache because they changed.
You ache because you expected them not to. It's your interpretation, not their behavior, that cuts deepest. And here's where you reclaim your power, by mastering your reactions. When they ignore you, you don't chase. When they post something that feels like a dagger to your chest, you don't spiral. When their presence fades, you don't make it mean that your worth has faded too. Because their choices speak about them, not about you. Your reaction is where your freedom lives. And the moment you start choosing your response instead of reacting impulsively, you become untouchable. This doesn't mean you numb your emotions. It means you observe them. You give yourself the space between stimulus and response. You breathe through the trigger instead of becoming it. It's not easy, especially when love is still alive inside you. But it's essential because every emotional outburst, every overanalysis, every desperate message, it only feeds the very fire you're trying to extinguish.
You don't need to change how they act.
You only need to change how you interpret it. Imagine the strength that comes from someone treating you with indifference, and you still choosing dignity, from someone pulling away, and you still choosing self-respect. That is the Stoic response. That is the beginning of emotional maturity.
And it's not just about them. This is training for life.
Because people will always disappoint, shift, withdraw, surprise. If your peace is tied to their behavior, your peace will never be stable. But if your peace is built on your response, on your clarity, on your principles, then nothing and no one can truly take it from you. So next time you feel the pull to react, pause. Ask yourself, does this reaction honor the person I'm becoming? Or is it just trying to win the attention of someone who's already gone? The answer may hurt, but it will also free you. Let the world be what it is. Let people be who they are. But master yourself, and you'll never be a prisoner to their chaos again. 5. Redefine love as something you give, not something you chase. Most of us were taught to see love as something we get, something that comes from the outside, given by someone else, validated by their attention, their affection, their presence. So when that love is withdrawn, it feels like we've been emptied, like something essential to our identity has been taken away. But that idea, while common, is the very reason heartbreak feels like destruction. The truth is, love was never something you had to chase. It was something you carried all along, within you. The Stoics didn't write much about romantic love in the way we think of it today. But their core philosophy touches something deeper. They taught that virtue, living with reason, integrity, and alignment, is the highest good. And love, real love, is virtuous. It doesn't demand, manipulate, or break you to feel whole. Love is something you express through your values, not something you beg for through someone else's approval. So, what happens when you love someone who doesn't love you back? That's when your definition of love is tested. If love, to you, is a transaction, if it only exists when it's returned, then of course their distance will feel like a death sentence. But if love is something you give, not to be repaid, but to remain in integrity with your heart, then even when it's not returned, it doesn't break you because you didn't lose anything. You simply offered something beautiful and they weren't able to hold it. Redefining love doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means loving without needing to possess. It means you can say, I cared deeply. I showed up fully. I gave what I had to give. And now it's time to walk away with your dignity intact. Think about it this way. If your worth depends on being chosen by someone else, then your worth is always at risk. But if your worth is defined by how you choose to love, with honesty, depth, and courage, then it remains untouchable, even in rejection. So many people stay stuck in emotional limbo, not because they're still in love, but because they never felt seen. They want that person to come back just to validate that their love mattered. But what if it already did? What if the fact that you loved with all your soul is already enough? What if the closure you're waiting for isn't a conversation, but a shift in your own understanding of what love truly is? Ask yourself, am I loving because I want to offer something real, or because I want to fill a space inside me that I believe only they can fill? That question might sting, but it reveals everything, because the love you gave was not wasted. It was proof that your heart is alive, that you're capable of depth, of devotion, of something rare. That love made you more. And now it's time to give that love to the one person who actually needs it most. You. 6. Don't confuse pain with connection. It's one of the most dangerous illusions we fall into after a breakup. The idea that if it still hurts, it must still mean something. That the ache in your chest is a sign that the bond is unbreakable, that the pain is proof of depth of love, of a story that isn't finished yet. But what if pain isn't a sign of connection, but a sign of resistance? What if it's not about them at all anymore, but about your own unwillingness to release the story you've been telling yourself? You see, the mind craves meaning. When someone we care about leaves, the brain scrambles to fill the gap. And because the silence is unbearable, we start to assign value to the pain. We make it sacred. We say things like, I still feel this way because what we had was real. But real love shouldn't trap you in suffering. Real connection doesn't survive on misery. If the only thing keeping them alive in your heart is your sadness, then that's not love. That's a wound. The Stoics taught us to look past surface emotions and observe the deeper mechanics. As Epictetus said, when something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude toward it. You can either accept it or resent it. Pain is inevitable. But how we interpret that pain, how we build stories around it, that's where our freedom begins or ends. There are people who stay emotionally attached for years, not because the love is alive, but because the pain has become familiar. They've wrapped their identity around heartbreak. They start to fear who they'd be without it. That's not connection. That's captivity. It's emotional inertia. It's forgetting that you're allowed to feel something deeply and still let it go. So here's a hard question. Are you still in love, or are you just addicted to the feeling of missing them? Because sometimes longing becomes a habit. And if you're not careful, you begin to equate sadness with significance. You begin to believe that moving on would somehow disrespect what you felt. But it's the opposite. Letting go isn't betrayal. It's the ultimate act of respect. Respect for yourself. Respect for what was. Respect for what deserves to come next. If the pain is still sharp, that's okay. That means you're human. But don't worship it. Don't feed it. Don't sit with it so long that it becomes your home. You are allowed to honor your feelings without letting them define your future. So next time your chest tightens and your mind drifts back, ask yourself this. Is this real love, or just an echo of something I haven't fully released yet? The answer might not come right away, but just asking the question moves you closer to peace. And that peace, it's not the end of the connection. It's the beginning of a new one, between you and your freedom. 7. Focus on who you're becoming, not who you've lost. After someone leaves, it's easy to feel like the story is over. Like the chapter closed, not just on a relationship, but on you, your joy, your direction, your sense of self. You don't just grieve them. You grieve the version of yourself that existed when they were by your side. And in that emotional fog, we make a quiet, unconscious mistake. We start living in reverse, looking back, remembering, comparing, wondering. But healing doesn't happen backwards. It begins the moment you shift your gaze from who walked away to who you're becoming now. Stoicism isn't about burying your emotions. It's about directing them. And that direction should always lead you closer to your values, your clarity, your evolution. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be 1 inch." The same applies here. Don't spend your life wondering what the relationship could have been. Spend your life becoming the person who doesn't need it anymore. Pain has a strange way of showing us what truly matters. It humbles us, strips away our illusions, forces us to confront the parts of ourselves we overlooked while loving someone else. Maybe you abandoned your passions to keep them comfortable. Maybe you made yourself small to make space for them. Maybe you gave, and now you don't even remember what it feels like to receive. That's not your failure. That's your awakening. Because here's the truth. They may have left your life, but the lesson didn't. And that lesson is sacred. It holds the blueprint for the next version of you. Wiser, stronger, more aware. But you can't meet that version while you're still chasing ghosts. So the question becomes, what will you build now that they're gone? Not out of revenge, not to prove anything, but because the time and energy you once gave to them now belongs to you. Start small. Reconnect with your habits. Revisit the goals you shelved while waiting for their attention. Read something that expands your mind. Move your body. Speak to yourself with the kindness you kept giving away. Day by day, these aren't just actions, they're declarations. They say, I'm not stuck in the past. I'm not defined by what I've lost. I'm building something better now from the inside out. It's okay to look back. It's okay to miss them. But don't stay there because your future is not behind you. And the person you're becoming, the one who made it through, who chose clarity over confusion, self-worth over chasing, that person deserves your full attention. Let their absence be the space where your growth begins. Let the silence become your canvas. And let your life speak, not in whispers of what was lost, but in loud, clear actions of who you are now becoming. 8. Protect your peace like it's your most valuable possession. When someone leaves your life, especially someone who meant everything, it's tempting to think the door is still open, that maybe, just maybe, they'll walk back in. So we leave little cracks in our boundaries. We stay emotionally available. We check in on them. We keep one eye on their life just in case. But here's the danger. Every time you leave that door unlocked, you invite chaos into the one place that should be sacred, your inner peace. The Stoics believed that peace wasn't something we find outside of ourselves. It's something we build, decision by decision, boundary by boundary. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." What he meant was, peace isn't passive. It's forged in the fire of what we allow, what we tolerate, and what we walk away from. So ask yourself, what am I still allowing that disrupts my peace? Maybe it's replaying old conversations in your mind. Maybe it's hoping for a message that never comes. Maybe it's checking their updates, their stories, their life, as if watching them live will help you feel alive again. But you know it doesn't. It only deepens the wound. Protecting your peace means closing the emotional tabs they still occupy. It means choosing not to respond when they reach out just to check in. Not because you're bitter, but because you're healing. It means resisting the urge to prove your worth or to remind them of what they lost. Because the more you try to get a reaction from them, the more you hand them the remote control to your emotional state. You have to stop letting someone who's no longer in your life control the volume of your thoughts. Imagine your peace as a fire you're building. Every thought, every choice, every new boundary, it adds warmth. But every time you let them back in without purpose, without clarity, it's like pouring cold water on the flames. And you wonder why it's so hard to feel steady again. Here's the truth. Your peace is not something anyone else will protect for you. It's your job. And that might mean silence. That might mean blocking. That might mean choosing solitude over drama. And yes, it might feel like loss at first, but in time you'll see it for what it is, self-respect. Peace isn't loud. It's not dramatic, but it's powerful. It allows you to breathe without waiting. It gives you back your mornings, your sleep, your joy. It reminds you that life can feel calm even if someone else isn't in it. So protect it fiercely, because in a world and in a mind full of noise, Your peace is the one thing that cannot be bought, borrowed, or replaced. 9. Don't seek closure from someone who couldn't give you clarity. We all want that final conversation, that one moment where everything makes sense, where the other person suddenly explains why they changed, why they walked away, why they let go of something you were still holding on to. It's human. We think that if we can just understand, the pain will disappear. But here's the Stoic truth. Closure is rarely given. It's created within you, not through them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul." And that includes getting worked up over explanations that may never come. Some people left not because you weren't enough, but because they couldn't face their own chaos. Some people changed without warning because they were never honest with themselves to begin with. And some simply faded, not with cruelty, but with cowardice. Waiting for closure from people who lack emotional depth is like waiting for stillness in a storm. If they couldn't give you honesty when they were close, what makes you think they'll offer clarity now that they're gone? You don't need their words to move on. What you need is a decision to stop needing permission to heal, to stop hoping they'll tie up the emotional loose ends they left behind. Because the truth is, even if you had that final talk, would it really change anything? Would it erase the months of silence, the unanswered texts, the moments you begged for presence and received distance instead? More often than not, closure is not about answers. It's about acceptance. It's about realizing that what they did or didn't do is a reflection of them, not a measure of your worth. It's about stepping back far enough to see that love shouldn't be confusing or manipulative or so fragile that it breaks without a word. It's about reclaiming your narrative, not as someone who was abandoned, but as someone who chose to rise when no one came to lift them. You may never know why they pulled away. You may never know what was real and what was performance.
But you do know what it felt like.
You do know how your body tensed when they were around. You do know how it felt to wait, to wonder, to try harder while they gave less. That knowing is enough. It's not poetic. It's not wrapped in closure, but it's truth. And truth, no matter how simple, is all you need to begin again. So let go of the script. Let go of the perfect ending. You don't need their apology to forgive. You don't need their confession to let go. You don't even need their memory to move forward. What you need is to finally tell yourself, I didn't get closure, but I got wisdom. I got strength. I got me back. 10. Choose freedom over fantasy. There comes a point where you have to ask yourself a hard question. Am I holding on to this person or to the story I created about them? Because sometimes we don't stay attached because the relationship was great, but because the fantasy felt better than facing the truth. We cling not to who they are, but to who we hoped they'd become, to who we needed them to be. But hope without reality becomes a prison. And if you're not careful, you'll spend years trying to relive something that never truly existed in the first place. The Stoics would tell you, reality is your ally. Illusion is your enemy. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to live in accordance with nature, with how things are, not how he wished they were. That's what emotional detachment requires. The courage to look your fantasy in the eye and let it go. To accept that they weren't ready, that they didn't show up, that their silence spoke louder than any apology ever could. Freedom is not found in waiting. It's found in release. You have to understand, when you live in fantasy, you put your life on pause. You wait for texts that won't come. You reimagine conversations that never happened. You dream of a version of them that only lives in your mind. But life, real life, is happening without you. While you sit frozen in longing, your future is knocking, and you can't hear it over the noise of your own illusions. Choosing freedom doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight. It means you finally decide that your reality, with all its sadness, all its healing, all its truth, is better than a perfect lie. It means you accept the ending, even without the fairy tale. It means you choose presence over possibility. So ask yourself, what has this fantasy cost me? How many nights of peace? How many mornings of clarity? How much confidence have I lost chasing someone who wasn't even looking back? And more importantly, what could I be creating, becoming, building if I finally let go? You are not here to live in what if. You're here to live in what is and to build something beautiful from it. That begins the moment you stop asking whether they'll come back and start asking what your life looks like without needing them to. Because real love, the kind that's aligned, reciprocal, and empowering, never needs to be chased. And the longer you hold space for someone who's already gone, the more you delay the arrival of the person, the peace, and the power that's meant for you. So choose freedom, choose clarity, choose yourself, and walk forward. Not with bitterness, not with regret, but with quiet strength. You let go not because you stopped caring. You let go because you finally remembered what you deserve. Letting go doesn't mean erasing the past. It doesn't mean pretending you were never hurt or acting like you never loved. It means choosing peace over chaos. It means standing in the middle of your pain and still deciding, I deserve better than this confusion. It means honoring what was and releasing what no longer serves who you are becoming. The wisdom of the Stoics was never about suppressing emotion. It was about directing it, channeling it into something greater, into growth, into strength, into stillness, and most of all, into freedom. Because at the end of the day, the real test isn't whether someone loved you back. The real test is whether you can still love yourself after they didn't. So if you're listening to this today, still hurting, still wondering, still quietly hoping for a message or a miracle, I want to remind you, you are not broken. You are becoming. Every time you choose clarity over illusion, presence over longing, truth over fantasy, you're not just moving on, you're rising. This is your turning point. Not when they come back, but when you do. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who might need it too. And remember to subscribe. We're building a space for reflection, healing, and strength together.